She's there.
Sometimes I'm.
Okay, we'll do like this. Okay, we're gonna start off. Ken, you might want to face the screen. You don't have to, because you have the handout also, but might be. You can come sit here also. Whichever is easier.
Yeah.
Let me get the door. Maybe.
Oh, is there?
You get the door, I just sort of not. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't know I'm okay.
So me, you look like Mary David.
Okay, we're gonna start
We're
off
on camera.
with
We're on camera.
we're gonna start off with a prayer with a chapter of Psalms, which is relevant for this is a prayer that we say when in times of distress. Psalm 20. Let's say it together. In English, for the conductor, a song of
Song
David.
of David. May the Lord answer you on the day of distress.
May the name of the God of Jacob
Jacob fortify you. May he
send
send
your
you
aid from his sanctuary, and may he support it
you
inside.
from Zion.
May he remember all your meal offerings.
And may he accept your fat burnt offerings forever.
May he give you as your heart, and may he
desire.
fulfill all your
May
counsel.
he fulfill all your counsel. Let us sing praises for your
Your
salvation.
salvation, and let us assemble in the name of our God.
Our God.
May the
May
Lord
the
fulfill all your requests.
requests. Now I know
I
that
know.
the Lord
The
saved.
Lord saved his
Anointed.
anointed.
Answered him
him
from
His holy heavens with a mighty act of salvation.
salvation from his right hand.
These trust in chariots, these in horses, but we mention the name of the Lord our God. They kneel and fall, but we rise and gain strength. Lord, save us. May the King answer us.
To us on the day we.
Okay, so we got in our prayer. We'll give some tzedakah, some charity. There's a bowl of coins here. Whoever can take out from their own wallet, that's good. Whoever can take some from the bowl and put it in the charity box. So we'll all have a mitzvah of charity. Go ahead, pass around the bowl. The bowl of coins in the charity box.
Yeah, I'll give you Yes. I'm gonna leave.
Okay.
Right over here, actually, the other side of the park.
Hey, Joy. This class today, it's a very interesting class. Very excited about it. I hope the Zoom stays intact because this is my first time streaming on Zoom, so let's hope it works out. It's part of a more broad discussion about joy in general. Joy is a very big topic in Judaism. There's a famous verse from Psalm 20, serve the Lord with joy. That's a dogma for Jewish lifestyle till today. You serve God with joy. Everything is with joy. Came Hasidism to the picture and added a whole new level of joy. The Baal Shem Tov was the founder of Hasidus, emphasized very strongly the idea of joy, and his disciples in their writings and in their teachings disseminated the concept and really expounded on it, and it became a stigma that Hasidim are joyful. You know, you see sometimes the Jewish museums that have a painting of Hasidim. What's the painting of people dancing, right? Right. So that became their lifestyle. I mean, they were great scholars, but you don't see the pictures of them studying, because what stood out among Hasidim as opposed to Judaism in general was the emphasis on joy. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about joy. This is just one part of the discussion of joy. What we're going to deal with today is how to overcome obstacles to joy, fear, worry, and anxiety, and things that stand in the way of joy. Okay, there's a lot to be joyful about, and there's a lot to meditate upon to reach joy and internalize the joy. we're Jewish, we have a Torah, we're gifted with great gifts, and there's a lot to be happy about. But at the same time, there are hindrances because there are many things that go wrong, there are troubles, and we have to learn how to deal with that. So that's what we're gonna discuss today. Okay, so we have here an exercise on the first page of the textbook. It's page 104 in the copy you have. Page 104, where everyone can on their own measure themselves on this idea of worry and concern. How much does it distress you? How much does it disrupt your regular day? How much does it disturb you from being productive, from functioning properly? Right. This is I think this is part of an anxiety test that here. That's just the parts that relate to worry. The idea is that there is worry that is productive. There is worry that's sometimes good. But most worries are useless. Some worries are, maybe I wouldn't call them worries, maybe they're concerns, they're dilemmas that we have to find solutions to, right? If you're looking for a solution to a problem, then that's good, right? And you're being productive. But if you're worrying for the sake of worrying, then that's where we have to. There's an old story about the town of Chelm. Have you heard of the town of Chelm?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you heard of the town of?
The cursed town of Chelm, or people were fools, or
Yeah. There are many Jewish jokes about the town of Chelm because Chelm they were great scholars, and at the same time they were like foolish scholars. So many jokes about their wisecracks of Chelm, the wise men of Chelm. So one of the jokes about the wise men of Chelm is that there's a certain blessing you need to say on the moon. Sometimes it's cloudy, you can't see the moon, and it's at a certain time of the month when the moon is growing. The first half of the month, that's when we say this blessing. And it kept getting cloudy in the town of Chelm, and they couldn't say the blessing. So they decided one day they're going to trap the moon. So they put up a barrel of water, and when the moon went into the barrel, they closed the barrel. Then they opened it up by night. They said, "Oh, the thief must have come and stolen the moon." So these are the classic jokes of Chelm. So
Like Google Maps.
So in Chelm, they once had a discussion. They all got together and they said, "We have so many anxieties, we have so many worries, and it's just disrupting us from fulfilling our daily tasks. There's this one guy, he has nothing to do. He's unemployed. He just sits around all day. Let's give him the job of worrying for all our." There was once a comedian. He came off the plane. They asked him, "How are you feeling?" He said, "Oh, I'm exhausted from worrying about the plane the whole time." They said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, we divided the jobs. So he said the pilot will steer the plane and I'll do the worrying." So they said, "We'll give this guy who's unemployed, we'll let him do all the worrying for all of us, and so we'll be able to go on with our day." So finally, he had what to do with his day. So he sat and worried about this guy's problem, the other guy's problem. Hey, one day they see him on the street and they see he's happy, he's smiling from ear to ear. They say, "Wait, you're supposed to be worried. You're supposed to be having an anxiety attack. Why are you so happy?" He says, "Well, I finally have a job." So, okay, so there are worries that are just worrying. Like in all these jokes, you just see they're worrying for the sake of worrying.
But this is frequency. This is measured by frequency.
Right. In other words, the measure is to see how much it disrupts your
Right.
daily life. And so this is, let's deal with it. We'll discuss today. Comes and goes. Yeah. They say, what's the difference between another joke? They say, what's the difference between a neurotic and a normal person? A normal person worries about the future. A neurotic worries about the past. They're both worrying about things that don't happen, but he's worrying about things that aren't going to happen, and he's worrying about things that haven't happened.
Sometimes it's wrong behavior too.
Right. Okay. So let's delve into it. Let's delve into it.
Yeah.
So we'll okay. So here's the first. If you look at the screen, you'll see here's the first thing we're going to discuss, which is if you feel a certain way, is it really possible to change that? We aren't in control over our feelings. If we feel a certain way, then that's the way we feel. Tell somebody who's under stress, don't be stressed. Tell somebody who's sad, don't be sad. Well, if he's sad, he's sad. Tell somebody, well, I'm telling you, you better love Love your neighbor. Well, if I don't love him, what should I do? It's a feeling. You can't tell me to have a feeling. You can tell me to do something. How can you tell me to have a feeling? So
I think you're supposed to, what they say to do is to look at the emotion, from the outside, like observe it, they say, like, we're not hostage to our emotions, like you could. Kind of just observe it, like, okay, I'm anxious right now, I'm worried right now, like, why is it? You sort of like observe it as an outsider, like, oh, I'm feeling
right,
this way.
right. That's the
like,
first
why?
step. That's the first step to do.
She's
It's-
actually, believe it or not, she's not joking either. She's worried about if she closed the door.
Oh, this door?
You can go check. You can go check.
Yeah, but this is.
Really?
You see, when I.
That's a Jewish thing.
But not having shoulders, because I didn't want to put it on them.
It's a good thing.
Okay, let's focus because we have a lot to do today.
Yeah,
We're going to discuss today 2 strategies for dealing with worry. One is more of a practical tip, which is from the book of Proverbs. And the second is more going to the root cause of it and seeing how we can change our perspective and preempt the worry and concern from its, pin it in the bud.
but then don't you have to, decipher? Because some worries are actually legitimate and some of them are really just a direct explanation, reason for it.
Right. So let's see. We're gonna get into
Yeah,
it.
I
We're
think
gonna
we
get
should
into
make a
it.
distinction there too, right?
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna get into it.
Um,
Okay. So the first thing we have to know is that we have emotions and we have actions. Actions we are in control of. Emotions we're not in control of. A person can't control if he loves somebody or not, if he's afraid of a situation or not, if he's sad or not. But we are in control of our actions. What else are we in control of?
Decision making.
Our words.
Or-
Our words. You know what else we're in control of? We're in control of our thoughts. We could decide if to think about something or not. We can't decide how we understand something. Well, we can decide if we want to think about it, or we can distract ourselves to something else. Right? We don't necessarily have to be engaging our thought. In other words, thought, speech, and action are 3 forms of engagement. We engage with an item by doing an action. We engage in speech, and we engage our mind and thought. Those engagements we can disengage. We don't have to actively be thinking, speaking, or doing. Our feelings and our understandings, those are inherent. Those are much deeper. So if we want to fix the way we feel about something, there are 2 ways of going about it. Either we can deal with it externally, which is don't act upon it, don't speak about it, don't think about it, disengage from it. That's more of an external patch. Then there's a deeper way, which is to change our perspective, to change the way we understand something. Okay? These are the two strategies which we're going to discuss today. Okay, the first one is going to be more of a practical one, and let's see how that works. We're going to see how it works that by disengaging from it, we can actually change the way we feel about it. So here's a verse from Proverbs. Proverbs is a book written by King Solomon. It's one of the 24 books of the Bible. And it's all about the wise paths, the way a person should live his life. And here is a very important one. Daga b'levish yaschena. If there's concern in a man's heart, you should cast it away. Okay, that's the simple interpretation of the verse. Comes the Talmud. The Talmud is, you know what the Talmud is? The Talmud is a series of the first encyclopedia of Jewish thought and Jewish law, Jewish philosophy. It's a monumental series that was written about 2,000 years ago. It's almost the first written books of Jewish philosophy, and it is the primary subject learned in yeshivas and rabbinical schools till today. That's the Talmud. The Talmud says, really, this verse can be understood in 2 ways. First way is, like you see the word suggests, yaschena means shove it away. So if you have a bad thought, if you have a concern, send it away. There's another way of
Be
reading it.
specific.
We're gonna get more into it. We're going to get more into it.
it.
The second way is Yesichena. It's almost the same word, but since the Bible is written without vowels, every word can really be read in multiple ways. So one way of reading it is Yaschena, cast it away. Another way of reading it is Yesichena, talk about it. If you have a concern in your heart, talk about it. Talk about it to somebody else. That's another way of dealing with a concern. Why does talking about it to somebody else help? What do you think?
Perspective, get another opinion,
It can give you, give you
support.
an idea,
support, where you could bounce mentally.
right? It's
Helps you
you're letting it out.
process Like speaking about it helps you process it yourself.
Helps you clarify it for yourself, right? Right?
Mhm.
Right. So it solidifies it in your by expressing it in words, you yourself get more clarity on it. And also you might receive advice, a good idea of what to do in your situation. Also, the fact that somebody else is there, the fact that somebody else empathizes with you, that itself alleviates the distress. That itself makes it easier. When two people are carrying something, it's easier than one person carrying it himself. So when somebody's there with you, just the companionship already. Okay, this is the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe. He was the third Rebbe. He lived in the city of Lubavitch. And we're going to quote him a few times tonight. He said like this: when it says to talk about it to another person, it's only another person in body, but united in spirit. When it says you should talk about it to somebody else, it only means somebody else, that they're just another person, but not a stranger. It means you should talk about it to somebody who can really be together with you, can identify with you on it. And that way, it's that's the real way to express it and share it with somebody else. Okay.
Rabbi, can you put up the screens that you are talking about?
It's not on the Zoom. Oh, okay. Let me do it. It says it is.
I only have on the left-hand side, I still have Psalm 20 up.
Okay.
And I have, on the left-hand side, I have through page 4.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. How about now? There you go. You should have it now. You see it?
Chabad.
Yeah. Okay, that's
I
what
have the Chabad now screen, right?
Yeah.
Chachma, Bina. Yeah. Good.
Or desserts. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
If it's stated.
All right. So how do we deal with distraction? How do you distract yourself? How do you distract yourself from a negative thought?
Possible ignore certain things you can ignore without being insulting. Without showing a lack of, you don't want to validate them, but you want to sort of not focus too heavy on something that's disturbing you don't want to talk about.
You know the experiment, don't look at a white bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't think about a white bear. Right.
Doesn't it depend, it's not subjective, it depends on the situation.
See, well, take your mind off of it. So
Take your mind off it.
take your mind off of it. Okay, so we're gonna bring a story. There was a story of the Tzemach Tzedek, actually, the same Rebbe who we brought earlier, right? Tzemach Tzedek. Do you see him now?
Yeah, leave it for a second. What is posek?
Like a judge.
Oh.
Halakhic rulings. Okay. Chabad is an acronym. It stands for Chachma, Bina, and Das. What is the difference between Chachma, Bina, and Das? What are these three? Chachma means wisdom, creativity. Bina means understanding. And Das means
No, relevance.
relevance. Becomes something you know, something you can relate to, something you can access. Becomes an easy access piece of knowledge. Chachma is the when you have the idea, when you have the mere concept. First time you have the concept, when you're introduced to the idea, that's called Chachma.
Part.
Every idea that we understand, that we know of, we're first introduced to it, right? Our first introduction is just the idea. Then we start understanding it. We break it down. We have a better understanding of it. That's Bina. Okay? And then there is when it becomes relevant to our lives, when it becomes something we think about, we connect to it regularly, we go back to it, we apply it to different areas of our life. That's Das. Now, Das is a very important one because there are many things that you understand, but they remain abstract ideas. They remain just in the realm of understanding. Many things you objectively, you know the truth, but they don't have an impact on your life. And that's why Das is very important. Now, how do we make something relevant? How do we make something Das? How do we make something that it's, how do we apply it? How do we internalize it? Make it part of our life?
Practice,
Going back to it,
practice.
continuing to go back to it.
I
Yeah.
would say, sort of outline it. It's not enough to do it in your mind, but maybe journal it in a certain way. Substantiate it, by practicing it, the application, practically speaking. But also writing it so you can refer back on another day and maybe the following week, so you can make reference to it again.
Very good.
I think
That means you have to keep going back to it, right? Yeah.
I just think making something a habit is important to making it relevant in your life.
Continuously going back to it. That's the point that everybody's saying. In other words, I want to give you an example to understand that. This is just an example I thought of when I was in the car driving on the highway just now, and I saw some advertisement, and I thought, oh, that's a good example. You see an advertisement. Let's say Coca-Cola is trying to catch your attention. They want you to buy into it. Let's say it's a product you never heard of before. Okay, so the first thing they need to do is to catch your attention. You know, brand recognition. You should know the concept. That's Chachma. The first idea. You should know they exist. So here, they're not going to start selling you on it. They just want you to recognize the topic. So first time a company comes out, they'll come out with bizarre advertisements, which are just weird, awkward sentences just to catch your attention. You'd be like, oh, what's that? And then, oh, they caught your attention. Now you're familiar with the company. Like, which company is making these bizarre ads? And now you know them. Okay, that's Chachma. Now you're introduced to it. Then we have to develop the idea. That's going to be Bina. Now they're going to tell you why it's good and all about it and explain you which problems in your life it solves, right? That's Bina.
Mhm.
And then the marketing people say that they have to, stick the message in your face about 10 times after you're familiar with it in order to make you actually buy it, right? Just because you have to continue being reminded again and again and again about it, and until it trickles in, until you actually take action, right? So that's Das, making it relevant. The way to access Das, to make it relevant, is by continuously bringing it up, by continuously thinking about it. Imagine a certain product is good for you, and you understand how it's going to be a solution for your life, but you never think about it. You're not going to buy it. Okay, so like all of you said, Das is continuing to go back to it and remind yourself of it and continuously think about it.
People who make commercials,
Let's not get too
you get
distracted. Yeah.
bombarded by the same people that, same concept. So you get tired of it, and then it's so programmed in your mind, you're going into a store, you don't even realize it.
Okay. So now, how does this tie into what we're saying? The Tzemach Tzedek had a family member who wrote to him a letter. In this letter, he expressed great sorrow and distress about several matters. It doesn't say in the letter. We only have the response letter of the Tzemach Tzedek back to his family member. It doesn't say what the problems were. Presumably health, family, financials, the regular stuff. And the Tzemach Tzedek answered him by explaining this concept. Without thinking about it, you're cutting off your Das. There's a chain. You think about it, the continuous thoughts, they feed the das, the relevant part of your brain, and the relevance part of your brain, they bring to all the emotions. If something is not relevant, you have no emotions towards it. If something is just an abstract concept, you don't love it, you're not afraid of it, it doesn't exist in your world. You can know it's true, but you're not going to be affected by it. Something that's going on, it could be a very real thing, but if you don't feel it's a reality in your life, if you feel like it's just a dream, it's a concept, it's a theory, then you're not going to actually be afraid of it, and you're not going to actually have a passion or a love towards it. Only the moment they convince you that this is something actually relevant and pertinent in your life, then you're going to have emotions towards it. So emotions, emotions come from das. Without das, without the relevance, you could have an understanding. You can understand a lot of things. You can understand right and wrong. You can understand what's going on in the upper worlds. You can understand philosophical ideas. They're not relevant. They're not going to have any impact on your life. So we have a chain. Thought, actively engaging in thought, brings to das, make it relevant. If you don't think about it again and again, it's going to be irrelevant to you. It's irrelevant, even if you understand all about it, it's not going to affect your emotions. So what the Tzemach Tzedek answered him was, are you in control over your understanding? No. Are you in control over the relevance? No. Are you in control over your fears? No. What you are in control of is to actively engage in thought. Thought is like an action. You're engaging in thought. You can cut off the actual thought, and then little by little, the less you think about it, the less relevant it's going to be, and the less you feel the emotion towards it. Okay. Go ahead.
However, just looking at it from another side of the spectrum, if it had a spark from the beginning, then maybe there's something that inspired you to begin with. So if that spark could maybe transfer itself to another area, but not quite that you didn't wind up doing. Like, in other words, by association, something else. It would spark, well, I didn't go for that. I didn't stay with it. There wasn't enough dust. But you know what? Initially, the spark, you got to find out where that spark came from and what
Use it for something positive.
where it could be sublimated or transferred to.
Right.
I think.
Okay.
Because there was something there to begin with.
All right. Focus on something engaging. This is for the white beer thingy. If you try not thinking about something, it's not going to work, right? You're just going to think about it.
Right.
So what you do instead is you focus on something else that you could do. Okay. Just to clarify.
So what then is the solution? If you try and it doesn't disappear, then what is the solution?
This is a process that will happen little by little. The less you think about it, the less and less relevant it will be. So it doesn't happen in one day. Just like in advertising, they don't sell it to you in one day. They put it in front of your face, right, left, and center for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, until you buy into it.
No.
So also buying out of it has to be the same way, little by little. The less you think about it, the less it will be relevant to you. Did I answer your question?
Okay. Yes and no, because yes, it does, absolutely. But it doesn't answer the question for acute trauma.
For acute trauma, right. So let's leave that on the side for now. In general, just a general disclaimer that what we're discussing here is mainly regular day-to-day issues, right? We're not talking about serious tragedies and things that trauma, things that take over a person's life entirely. Because for that, one of the two, either it's clinical, which then Torah perspective can help, but clinical needs professional diagnosis as well. And B, the root cause therapy is much more necessary when it's something more traumatic, when it touches deeper. Distracting yourself has a limit when it comes to something so deep. So for that, we're going to have to get to the second part of our class, which is dealing with the root cause of preemptively preventing worry from creeping in to begin with. Okay, but even then, even later on, I just want to say, even later on, we're not going to deal with major tragedies. We're going to deal more with giving a general perspective. There's actually going to be a later class 4 is about how to deal with tragedy and loss and how to keep faith in times of great distress. Okay, but that's a topic on its own. And are you still on?
I am.
Me on Zoom?
I certainly can.
Okay, good. Okay, I got a notification saying that my internet connection is unstable. Okay. So
You were in and out.
we're dealing here with regular things and minor worries, and we'll go more serious things. We'll hopefully address at a later time. Okay.
Mhm.
So focus on something engaging. The idea here is that we said earlier there are 3 ways of engaging yourself. You can engage in action, you can engage in speech, and you can engage in thought. There's a big difference between these 3. If you don't want to engage in action, if you want to disengage from action, then what do? Just don't do anything. You can engage and you can just disengage.
Is that that?
Das is the relevance
What
that
you're
happens
doing.
when you engage on
What
it
you're
a
doing,
lot,
but
right?
The other one.
Right.
Where you're
You're
not.
moving your das. Speech, if you want to not talk, it's the easiest, right? Just keep quiet. Wise people just keep quiet. How about if you don't want to think about something? So here it's harder because you can't not think because the mind is continuous. You're always thinking. What you could do is you can switch the thought for something else. You can't disengage from thought, but you can bring in a different thought. How do you stop thinking about a white bear? Think about something else so intensely. Watch a good movie. You'll be so engrossed in it, you'll automatically stop thinking about the white bear. That's the way you deal with bad thoughts, by focusing on something else. And so let's look inside on the textbook, page 109. Page 109. So here he explains this concept. Each person has 3 soul garments. This is the letter of the Tzemach Tzedek to his disciple and family member who had these distressing thoughts. Each person has 3 garments: thought, speech, and action. Garments meaning expressions of his soul. They comprise the primary components of human behavior. And a person has a choice and the power to do as he wishes when it comes to thinking, speaking, or doing. Even if you're emotionally afraid, you're able to remove your thought, speech, and action from that emotion. And when you let go of the thought, the fear will dissolve on its own. Or, at the very least, the fear will become dormant and it won't take up your awareness. And over the course of a few days, it will completely dissipate. Okay, I guess you were talking about a few days, could be a few weeks. It doesn't matter. The idea is that it's a process that the more you take your mind off of it, if you're not thinking about it, then it's not relevant and your soul just has nowhere to express its worry. Even if you have that fear dormant deep inside you, it has no expression. And you see text 3, page 110. It is appropriate for you to train yourself away from all melancholy. You can remove the fear from your heart, even when there is something legitimate to fear. All the more so in your case. Sorry, that's not the sentence I'm looking for. Oh, I'm looking for page 111. Sorry, page 111, text 4. The primary method of removing negative thoughts from your mind is by directing your mind toward other matters. This can be worldly things, if they are necessary and make you happy. Okay, think about your business, think about the news. I guess not the news, not nowadays when all the news is negative. But you can think about other things, good news, and God's Torah, which delights the heart, by establishing fixed times for daily study, particularly with another person is even better, because then it helps you distract it even more, like we're doing right now. But Torah study, anything good to focus on is better than that's how you take your mind away from something. So focus on something good. So this is lesson number 1 of today, which is always have something available in your arsenal to immediately engage in something good. Okay? Whenever there's something negative that comes up, immediately jump into something good. Have something good to think about. And the same applies, by the way, in relationships. If you think of something negative about somebody, always have something good to think of that person. And instead of just saying, oh, let me not think of that, delve into the opposite. Inspire yourself with something good about them.
Silver lining,
Instead of just ignoring the negative,
find a silver lining.
bring in a positive and it'll.
Well, I think we're instructed to do that by God, right?
Okay. All right. We're learning Torah here.
Yeah, you
We're
need
all-
to say.
It's all God's instructions. Okay. Any questions? Feedback. How do you think you're going to implement this?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I just been kind of on and off in the background. I really like this because I especially like, with all the horrors of the news of everything going on, I kind of forgot that, I am an artist and I can go back and looking at this picture of the painting. I'm like, oh yeah, I should like sketch or draw or like do something else and like just to distract myself a little bit. And, I also have like an 8-month-old baby and it's just like, she's so sweet and cute, but it's like, sometimes it's like I'm like thinking about the news or thinking about like what am I gonna do while I'm like with her, and it's like I don't want to do that. I just want she's so pure and good, and I just want to like be with her and try to like not think about that. So it's just like I'm really trying to focus on how to remove that and just be present and be with her and also like yeah, just thinking about distraction sounds good too. So I don't know. I think I'm gonna try to sketch more and maybe go back to playing some more music and stuff like that and just engage in positivity. So yeah, thank you.
That's really nice. That's really nice. First of all, Mazel Tov on your baby. May you merit to see much joy from her.
Thank you. Yeah.
And there you go. You got something good. You have something positive always near you to reach for.
And stay off social media, that's the.
Right,
that's
right.
the smart thing to do.
Okay.
Definitely really hard to
There are a
do.
lot of positive videos going around, positive news going around. You see the good energy of the soldiers and all the volunteering that's going on here in the USA. People just donating so much at levels that haven't been seen before, and in Israel, there's all the citizens just volunteering so much.
Volunteering, going to
It's beautiful,
police.
right? So when the mind thinks of the negative, there's so much positive to think about. We have to bring in the positive instead of just suppressing the negative thoughts. Bring in something positive, and the negative will dissipate. And then ultimately, the emotions also will have no oxygen. You're not thinking about it. The emotions have no oxygen, so they dissipate. All right, now we're going to move on to part 2. We're running short on time.
Okay.
112. In God we trust. Till here was a practical tip on how to deal with negative thoughts, and now we're going to go more to the root cause to fix our perspective, and perhaps give us a new idea, which will enable us to live a happier life to begin with, and a less worrying life. Okay. There's a book. I have it right here. It's called Sha'ar HaBitachon, The Gate of Trust. This book was written by Rabbi Bachya ibn Pekuda about 1,000 years ago in Spain. He was a Jewish philosopher, a great scholar, and this is a monumental work. It's a very sophisticated book. I mean, it's a whole book. He doesn't repeat himself even once in the book. It's very well structured, very logical, and all based on the verses and the teachings of the Talmud, etc. And this is all about trust. Gate of Trust.
No, the author's name.
Rabbeinu Bachya
Yeah.
ibn Pekuda. He wrote his book actually in was it Arabic or Ladino? I'm not sure.
Arabic.
Okay, and it was translated by Ibn Tibbon, the famous translator, right?
So they can translate it accurately to what it should be?
And this is in English. It's a very good translation, actually.
Okay.
If anybody wants to get the book, it's a great book.
How much?
Gate of Trust. I could send you the link afterwards. There are several translations. This one is the best. So here comes in the concept of trusting God. Trusting God. We have a chapter 23 in Psalms on page 112. Let's take a look at the terms used in this chapter. Song of David. God is my shepherd; I shall not want. I will not be missing anything. He causes me to lie down in green pastures, near still waters. Beautiful poetry about how calm and secure I am in God's hands. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths. Even when I walk in the valley of darkness, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Let's just use some of his phrases just to bring out the concept that we're talking about. God is my shepherd. King David was actually, incidentally, a shepherd. So when he says God is my shepherd, it means a lot. He wrote the Psalms. It actually means a lot. God is my shepherd. A sheep relies on its shepherd wholeheartedly. It has no concerns for pasture, for water. It knows its shepherd is the one to go to. It's going to take care of it. And that's where this feeling of serenity, of tranquility comes from. This brings out a certain kind of trust in God that removes all worries from your life because you're in God's hands. Everything that happens to you is ordained by God. Everything that happens in your life is directly handled by God. He leads my soul in the paths of righteousness. Yeah, I will dwell in the house of God for my entire life. By the way, when it says I will dwell in the house of God, it doesn't mean like God has a house and you go live there. It means wherever I am, I feel like I'm in God's house. I'm in a good place, right? So just to let it sink in a little bit. Imagine we would feel the feelings that are the emotions that are expressed in this psalm. The level of tranquility that there is. There's another psalm. It's not brought here. Psalm 121 is another classic one. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my salvation come? Right? My salvation will come from God, the creator of heaven and earth. He will not sleep, nor will he slumber, the God of Israel, the guardian of Israel. Right? He's our guardian. He's guarding us by day, by night. He doesn't sleep. He never takes his eyes off of us. We're in his hands. This level of trust brings a feeling of peace, of tranquility, of knowing that wherever you are, you're in a good place. Let's try to internalize this. Let's take it apart and see how we can apply it. Before we go on, let me ask your opinion. Before we take it apart, what do you think we would need in order to live in such a way, to actually feel this way? What are we missing from actually living such a life? We know God watches us and he's a good shepherd.
Security, a feeling of security.
What's the hindrance from that feeling of security? Why aren't we just all feeling so secure right now? Because we're in God's hands.
People attacking us.
Exposure.
Okay, so you're saying things that are happening, right?
Yeah.
Experiences that are happening.
Things we have no control over can be overwhelming, and it's around us all the time. In terms of what we hear, in terms of what we read, and the present day, what's going on in this
Saying everything that's going on around us just disrupts us from feeling that.
Exactly.
Instead of feeling this, we're feeling that. Okay.
Unknown. The fact that we don't know what's
fear of
going
the
on.
unknown.
You said experience or the experiences?
Experience and
Fear of-
Experience means my own past experience.
Yeah, right.
Ken, what do you think? You're so quiet.
He's worrying right now.
Allison, what do you think?
Well, I do my own prayers, but I find sometimes, we're born to parents And I especially think of my mother and, you know, God gives us, love and family, and then, you know, I used to that in your life and other loved ones, and then it ends, and it's very hard to adjust because life keeps changing. Something that you've known, so. You know, for me, I mean, my mother didn't die in a tragic way, and she's almost 98, but, you know, it's just that it's hard.
like a year.
to- you just have a lot of memories and, you know.
Past trauma.
But it
Is that what you're
wasn't,
saying?
it wasn't trauma, but I always thought of it, see, that's the thing, I've always had an obsession about death anyway, I was thinking about it way before it happened, even when I was little. So now that it's happened, I feel like she lives on in me, and, you know, my values, you know, it wasn't as deep, you know, it wasn't as deep as I am, and psychological, philosophical, but anyway, but she, like, taught me my good values, and she loved me so very much, which makes me such a loving person, because she was very affectionate and warm to me. And I wouldn't say she spoke about God much, but, you know, we had a little bit of Jewishness in the household, marry somebody Jewish and this and that. We weren't led by God as much, and maybe that's what was missing.
Right. Okay, let's get into it a little more.
Yeah, I'd like to think that I'm living not by the whims of any individual who feels like doing whatever they do. I would hate to think of the fact that anybody with the biggest gun in town is going to be in control of everything.
So you're saying the hindrance is being in control of others.
I'd like to have the idea that God is in control of everything, rather than any monster I may come across. I don't want to fear the monsters I come across.
You're saying this is the benefit of having this trust.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'd rather trust in God, that God has everything under control, than rather give that control mentally over to anybody who I could think would overpower.
That's a good point.
I think for me that the real hindrance is lack of connection. And that can really flip on a dime for me, you know, because I can, you know, my stepdad's been ill lately, and I can be in the hospital feeling just like really worried and really disconnected. And then sometimes I'll just connect with him, but also with other people that are there, you know, because he's in a room with somebody else, and I'll kind of talk to the other person that's there, you know, the other guy's wife who's there, and we're talking and connecting with her, and then also just sort of connecting with, I guess, God, you know, and that changes everything
Oh, yeah.
in that moment.
Right. Right.
In that moment, it just changes.
Right. Right. Beautiful. That's very nice. It's very nice. Let's see how the Rabbi Bachya writes it. Page 113, we have a quote from this book. The benefits of trust in God include tranquility of the heart in the face of worldly worries. The one who trusts finds quiet, security, and serenity within this world. This is just a quote from a full chapter. The whole introduction, he's explaining what is the feeling of serenity, what is the feeling of trust, what is the emotion that comes when you actually trust. Okay, the whole book is to explain how you get there, to explain the equation that will bring you to actually trust. Okay, but the introduction, he describes how beautiful a life of trust is. So let's take a look at this. The slide here, you don't have this in your books. Let's take a look at the slide. Let me zoom in so it'll be a little bigger. Okay. Bitachon meditations. Bitachon means trust. Let me ask you a question. Think of a person that you trust and tell me, why do you trust them? Think of a person that you wouldn't mind closing your eyes and saying, let them run my day for me. I'll go by their plan. What makes you trust them? You don't have to say it. What Rabbi Bachya does is he gives 7 conditions. He says there are 7 things that elicit trust. That if someone has these 7 things, you will trust them. You will trust them completely, unconditionally. As we'll go through all 7 things, we'll see that actually there's no human being that has all these 7. Only God has them. And that's why it makes sense. The conclusion follows that we should fully trust him. Okay. The first one is, the first condition that elicits trust, Hashem loves me and has compassion for me. What's the first, who do you trust? Do you trust somebody who doesn't love you and care for you? Of course not. Why would you trust them? They'll do something that's for somebody else's benefit. So the first condition to trusting somebody is they have to love me. Does God love us? We know God loves every single one of us individually. Okay. We all have people in our lives who love us, but they're not always thinking about us. They could forget about us, right? Does God ever forget about us? God watches over me always. He never abandons me nor neglects me. As I quoted earlier from Psalm 121, God will never sleep nor slumber. He's always watching us. He's always alert. He'll never forget about us. Imagine there's somebody who loves you, he cares for you, you trust him unconditionally, but then something big comes up and he forgets about you. He goes to somebody else, right? God never forgets us. Or like my wife says, when a kid starts crying because she went to the kitchen for a second, and the kid starts crying, and you think you forgot about them. She says, Mommy didn't forget you, and Mommy will never forget you. You want to make him feel secure. Mommy's never going to forget Mendel. Right? So God says, I will never forget you. So we can trust him. The third condition. Hashem is invincible and smarter than anyone or anything. Let me explain why this is important. Imagine somebody really loves you and he'll never forget about you. He'll do everything for your benefit. He'll try to give you the best of everything. Is he in control of everything? Somebody else might get in his way. Somebody else might take it away from him, might not let him give it to you. But does God have that limitation? God can do anything. There's nothing that he wants to do that he can't do. So since he loves us and wants to give us good and is thinking about our good, he can surely do it. There's nothing stopping him. So he will do it.
Can I just say something? Sometimes, people have different gifts in life, whether it's artistic or scientific or teaching, and people have a tendency to be very grandiose, how smart they are, but I feel it's a God gift, God gave it to you. People take credit for too much. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Number four. Hashem knows what is best for me, even better than I myself know. Which means like this. Let's say I want somebody to do what's good for me. Who knows what's good for me? I know what's good for me, right? I think so, at least. So I'll demand a certain result, the outcome that I feel is best, right? But if somebody really knows what's good for me,
I want to say something, but sometimes when you get in your life to a point when you can see it, that you didn't anticipate how good it turned out to be. But before that, you might not have sufficient evidence, so you have to be patient. But if you got to this point, then it's very,
very good, very good. So that's using positive experience. Earlier you said people have negative experience, that's why they can't trust. But if you have this positive experience, things seemed like they would be terrible and they turned out to be good, then you have actually a good experience to learn from, right?
Frame of reference.
There were
But without faith, you can't experience it.
this is all based on faith. Everything we're saying is based on faith.
What about gratefulness? That's very important.
It is very important.
Yeah.
And being grateful will help you in all of these meditations. These are all 7 bullet points of meditations. I mean, each one is explained at length in this book. This is a summary, okay? That if you think about all of these, you'll realize why in every aspect, God is worthy of trusting him. Not because of him. We're not doing him a favor by trusting him.
Right.
Because of us, because he really has us in mind. He really will do the best for us.
Do you know
Grace.
what led him to, like, why was this the topic that he wrote the whole book about? Just out of fear, do you know? Or
It's a very good question. Actually, it's one gate. The reason why it's called a gate is because it's part of a bigger book, which has about 8 gates in it.
okay, so it's just one.
So this is the gate of trust.
Okay.
So it's a book of in general serving God internally, emotionally. So he has there the gate of love
Okay,
and the
well,
gate of
just one line.
humility and the gate of trust.
Spark. Okay,
Yeah.
he was
Right.
inspired, David was inspired to write all that he did. I
Right.
mean, he wouldn't have written it if he didn't have the spark of the inspiration.
Well, it makes sense that there's other, right, like this is like
Yeah.
chapter, so not, yeah.
Certain chapters.
Yeah.
But you see, today it's so relevant that they make books just on this.
Yeah.
Because today it's very relevant because people are, you know.
But he's
people are
well
searching.
known.
Yeah, it's very popular.
I want to just focus on what Alex just said. Sometimes things seem to be annoying, and ultimately, you know, there's a good outcome that comes out of it.
Mm.
Everybody can find examples in their life when that happened. You thought something was going to be terrible, and it turned out that actually happened. You know, I heard from all of my friends that they all said that the first 10 houses that they checked out, the closing fell through, and they were disappointed after each one. And then it turned out that the one they finally got was much better than all the other ones. It just happens to everybody. You always think it's going to be terrible, and then it turns out that it was good. And you think about it, like, how did it work out so perfectly? Like, how that's so weird that's why the first times didn't it work? And you can come to the conclusion that actually it doesn't make sense. It must have been God.
I want to add something to this, because I think it's very relevant. The same kid that, you know, you have this attitude, not saving Ishma. And you said relevance is important. And often when you start and get attracted to certain ideas and way of life and so forth, you don't have this feeling. But if you persist, then over time, with all negativity you might go through, you might see that it actually works.
Right. Right. Alex is saying a good point. I'll just say it in other words, that this takes a lot of discipline. These meditations, we have to trust that they work and continue meditating on them until they work, because they for sure will work. But if you don't see the results right away, don't worry if you then say, oh, it's not working. They're bound to work. You have to be continuous on it, right?
You
You
have
have
to
to
stay
be-
focused
You have to trust the process.
and God
Right,
has his time
right.
when he will let it kick in.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
again, these are
His time, we can't make up our own time.
Absolutely.
meditations. We're dealing with it internally. We're going to the source of the issue. So we're trying to reform our perspective. Okay, reforming a perspective is a big process. It's a lot of meditation. We have to contemplate on it and ponder about it and apply it and see how it's relevant in our lives. Right? That's why it's good to have these bullet points and always refer back to them. And hopefully I'll make it available so everybody can have this you know, just a handout, just these bullet points. We can always go back to it and see and remember all these things. Okay, so let's go back to the text here. Hashem knows what's best for me, even better than I myself know. Okay, let's say you're a good friend, you trust them because they really want to do what's good for you, but guess what? They might do something that's bad for you. Your good friend might get you a job promotion. He thinks he did you the biggest favor, and it turned out to be very stressful for you, and you lost your friends, and I don't know what. Well, he meant the best for you. He didn't know. How's he supposed to know? But God knows. So it doesn't make sense to trust anyone as much as God that he'll do what's actually the best for you. Number 5, Hashem is in constant control. I am under his exclusive loving care from the moment of my birth and throughout my life, from beginning to end. Okay, the idea here is that God knows me from when I was a child, from when I came out of my mother's womb until today. He knows everything that happened to me. So somebody who comes into my life when I'm already an adult and they try doing the best for me, they don't know what I went through. They don't know the experiences. They don't know my insecurities. And then, you know, how often does it happen that spouses trigger negative feelings in their partners, and they don't know it because they weren't there in their childhood. They don't know, right? But God knows everything we went through from when we were babies. So he really knows what's best for us. Number 6, Hashem is in complete control. Nothing and no one can help or harm me except with the permission of Hashem. Meaning to say, there are no external forces. This is what you were saying, that I might be in control of someone else on the street. You know, whoever comes in my way might have an effect on me. Somebody says to me something not nice, could be in the middle of nowhere. It happens all the time. I'm humiliated, I'm offended, I feel terrible. Somebody could harm me in all sorts of ways. There's nobody who has control over your life other than Hashem. If anybody ever did anything negative to you, it wasn't them doing something negative. It was God doing something positive. It looked like them doing something negative. It was God doing something positive.
How is it positive if it hurts you?
Okay, how is it positive? That's a good question. God knows what's best for you in what's visible and in what's
Yeah,
deeper than what's visible.
he works out everything in the ultimately, in the bigger process, the bigger picture.
Right. But there's nobody else who can do anything to you.
That's true.
Number 7.
You don't understand it, that's why. Takes time to process.
Hashem loves me unconditionally and has deep compassion for me, even when I am undeserving or unworthy. This means, imagine somebody really loves me and cares for me and never forgets about me and knows what's good for me in the revealed and in the unrevealed. And what else did we say? And knows me from the day I was born and is in complete control. But then one day I might mess up our relationship. And then he'll say, you know what? You don't deserve my care anymore. Then I can mess up. So I can't fully trust. I always have to be cognizant to make sure I still have what to worry about. But God will always be kind to us no matter what we do. Even if we sin, God forgives us. Hashem loves us unconditionally, like a parent loves his child unconditionally, and even more.
But if you do something terrible, he won't make you forget.
He'll help you clean it up,
If
and
it
he'll
can
love
be
you.
cleaned up.
These are the 7 meditations that bring a person to complete trust.
Is this through Kabbalah?
Can money bring us happiness? Is this through Kabbalah? These are all concepts that are explained in Torah in general, and in Kabbalah they're emphasized
It's another
more.
format,
Yeah.
though.
Money?
Can money buy us happiness?
No, but it makes us feel more secure.
Not always.
Let me ask, can money make you feel more secure? I have the answer already. You said yes.
No,
No.
You say no.
But I'm not gonna survive without it.
it's, I mean, just with the work I do, I know like some really, really wealthy people. And some of them feel secure and some of them never feel
Right.
secure.
Very good point. That's a very good point. Yeah.
I worked for a guy that made $1 million a year. And he always worried about money. More so than people I knew that were not making it.
There's a million things to worry about.
Then all the people they know have even more money, so it's a game of
Exactly,
keeping up
exactly.
with-
Well, sometimes
Yeah.
they're broke.
Yeah.
Some people live in
Are
great
they
poverty.
Jewish?
They're calm, right?
They do
Yes.
They're Jewish too.
Right.
I think they make this class.
Allison, the idea is that everything that happens in your life, including your relationship with your landlord and whether you're going to pay your bills and everything, it's all things that we're doing, and God's really running everything. Every encounter that we have, every person we meet, everything somebody tells us, it's God running it. God put them in our way. He made this encounter with them.
They're evil, there's a lot of evil in the world. So,
He doesn't-
It's also God putting it. It's also God. It's also God. Now, why would God give us evil? That's a great question. Well, we'll discuss it in the
I
fourth
mean,
class.
profound
But
evil.
why?
I'm not talking about just being nasty, I'm talking about killing and, you know, unnecessary or people suffering, you know.
Well, people have free will though, right? So it's, I don't know what
But
the,
if
I don't know how
Right,
a
I-
family that lost their loved one,
Right.
what's going on in Israel, it's free will.
Right, like I said, we're not dealing here with big tragedies. We're not dealing with that now.
Right.
Because it's gonna take a whole discussion on its own. Right.
Yeah.
But yes, every single thing happens from God. We're in God's hands. In the Psalm which we referenced, I'll just say one thing. In the Psalm which we referenced, Psalm 23, he says, God is my shepherd, his rod and his staff guide me. There's an interesting one of the commentaries point out, what does the shepherd use his rod for? You know what he uses it for?
So
When the
that's
sheep try going out of the path, he hits them to go back into the right path. So even when we get hit, it's God's rod directing us in the right way. So even when there's something bad that's happening to us, we know it's our shepherd's rod. The sheep is hit, but the sheep knows it's its shepherd.
But you said, I know you said to me personally, many times we can't control everything, only God, we have to leave it to God.
Right, I don't want to get into the
Oh, that's
whole
another, all right.
the whole discussion
I
because
thought that fits in.
it's going to take us another hour. So I'm just trying to avoid that.
But maybe in the future you'll address it.
Yeah. Let's hope so. Yeah. What I wanted to point out is that on every dollar it says, "In God we trust." You know why it says it on the dollar? I don't know why they wrote it on the dollar, but I'll tell you what I think. They say a joke. You know why it says, "In God we trust"? Because the Federal Reserve, I don't know if you can trust with the debt they have now, but that's why they're right. We trust in God. Who's gonna give me this dollar? We trust in God. That's a joke. So
In case this dollar doesn't work.
In God, it doesn't say in God I trust, in God we trust.
right, this concept of trust is really what gives us security.
Yeah, we have to trust. In order to have faith, we have to trust.
Okay, I want to share with you a video. Short video. I'm going to pause the share screen for a minute. Second, let me go back to the share screen. This. There we go. Can you see it on Zoom? You see the video?
Yes.
1 second, but here we don't see it in person. Yeah. Okay. No, it's the wrong one. Oh, we see it. Okay, now I got it. Do you see it on Zoom?
Can money buy happiness? Not necessarily. It often invites the opposite response. But can money point the way to happiness? If you live in the US, it probably can. Take a peek at the dollar bill. 4 short words tell it all. Interestingly, the psychological effects of trusting God have been probed significantly. Back in 2010, Dr. David Rosmarin, a professor of psychology and widely acclaimed researcher of cognitive behavioral therapy, conducted a fascinating study into the real-life effects of trust in God.
I created a program to help people build higher levels of trust in God.
He specifically chose to test the kind of trust known to traditional Jewish belief as bitachon. Dr. Rosmarin identified spiritual strategies for coping with stress and anxiety. He then designed a program to clinically measure their influence on our natural stress coping mechanism. The 2-week program included materials, meditations, and exercises that nurtured a strong trust in God. He then deployed the program in a study of 120 random participants with reported elevated but subclinical levels of stress and anxiety. Dr. Ross Marin hoped to measure his program against a standard technique. So one group of participants was treated with progressive muscle relaxation, a typical method of stress relief that monitors and controls muscular tension. A second group of participants was provided with Dr. Ross Marin's daily Trusting God program, while a final group was offered no treatment at all. The participants were assessed before and after the program, and then again at a 6 to 8 week follow-up. The results of his study were astonishing. The muscle relaxation technique failed to produce clinically significant results when compared to the results of those who received no treatment at all, but the partakers of the Trusting God treatment scored clinically measurable improvements that were highly significant.
In statistical terms, there was a 2 standard deviation decrease in anxiety and worry over only a 2-week period, which is very, very significant.
And these gains lasted well after the program ended, demonstrating a long-lasting effect. The study indicated that the Trusting God method can be an effective practice for well-being for the global population. So instead of forking out top dollar, many of us could glance at the top of the dollar and remind ourselves that God is on top of things. When we recall where the buck truly stops, we can cash in on the benefits of cultivating confidence in our Creator, whose wealth of caring providence to each individual provides us with the capital for investing in our own state of happiness and calm.
It really provided clear evidence that working on one's faith can reduce levels of anxiety and depression and make things better. Experimental clinical evidence.
Okay. Are we back to the?
He's Chabad too.
Okay, do you see the PowerPoint on Zoom? Valley of Darkness? Okay, I guess whoever wants says it. I don't know if anybody's still there.
I think you have to explain darkness.
In some translations, in the world of the dead.
No, I know what it is.
Okay, so there you see the study, but it's all in here. It's all in the Torah. This is the
You
Jewish
don't want to
perspective.
expand on that, on the context,
Right.
within the context.
What do you mean?
When I walk in the valley of darkness.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna talk about this now.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't,
but I'm not-
we're not jumping ahead to the next one. Right? I think-
Leon, do you see the Valley of Darkness?
The Valley of Darkness.
What do you see on the computer?
I see it says JLI. I see it says Jewish Learning Instructions.
Okay,
I
let me
see.
share the different screen. May have changed this share screen. There we go. This better? Now you see it?
Even when I walk in the Valley of Darkness, I fear no evil. Yes.
Okay.
See no evil here, and I've
Okay.
heard that, but this is a different interpretation.
Okay, now Allison, here we're gonna address your concern, which is what do you do when there's so much darkness around you? Okay, we're gonna address it very briefly because we're really short on time, but there's so much darkness. Says King David in the Psalm, which we brought earlier, even when I walk in the valley of darkness, I fear no evil. Why? Why is he not afraid of evil? It's darkness. You are with me. Because you are with me. Since God is with me, wherever I am, so there's nowhere that can be really dark. In the darkest place, who do we have with us? God is with us. In the greatest darkness, in the greatest hardship, we know that we're still in God's hands. And that's where the security comes from, even in times of terrible of darkness. Well, let's not talk about terrible darkness. Let's talk about regular darkness, regular evil that's going on around us.
It could even be a day that's cloudy and people feel very sad, there's no sun out and they feel depressed.
Right, but I think in this context, it's something more, much more virtual.
Every person in
It
their,
is
in their own
relative.
darkness.
It's relative.
Everyone has their own darkness, right?
Right.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to go through darkness.
Yeah.
to appreciate the light.
Yeah, that's what.
I read that.
Well, I think
read
God
that.
wants that
I
for
read
us too,
that.
right? You have the distinction.
Right,
to
right. Leon, are you trying
grow
to say
from the
something?
Darkness into the light.
Oh, yeah, I really owe everybody an apology. I'm gonna have to excuse myself a tiny bit early.
Oh, you don't have to
Um,
apologize.
Yeah, I really just have a prior engagement right now, unfortunately. Nature calls.
Okay, I'll see you later.
Okay. All right, guys. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you. God bless you all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you for this. It's next week, right? There's another one every week.
Yeah, we're gonna have one next week. Yeah, if you want to stay on, I'm gonna say 2 more stories.
Okay.
I'm gonna say one story, which is a personal story. Happened to my mother. My mother had a stroke a few years ago. She was pretty young. She was 63. She had a very hard stroke. And until today, she's disabled. Let's all wish her a complete healing. On the day that she had the stroke, now the way a stroke works, just to give a little background, there's bleeding in the brain area, a hemorrhage, and the faster you can stop the bleeding, the less damage there is to the brain. The longer you leave the bleeding, so it enters the brain and it messes things up, and then it could be much more difficult to recover. She actually had it was a while till she got to the hospital till they gave her the medications to stop the bleeding, so it took a while and it was pretty serious. But people who don't get any medical treatment when the bleeding happens, so it can be an hour, 2 hours, and then they have no oxygen, and then heaven forbid. Now, my mother was alone at home at the time. My younger sister was there. She was 11 or 12. So that's basically alone at home. Now, my mother wasn't feeling well. She had a little bit of a fever. She had a headache. She was feeling weak. I mean, now we know why, right? But at the time she didn't know. She just was feeling weak. What do you do when you feel weak? You go lie down. You tell everybody, don't disturb me. And you go lie down for a few hours, right? But what happened was that on that day, she wasn't working. There was a family friend who was making a small celebration for the family, and they invited my parents over. And my mother said, I'm not going because I'm just not up to it. I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling too weak to go. But it's nice that you invited me. It wasn't something major like a wedding or a bar mitzvah. It was something small. And that's it. And she called my father and she said, can you go instead of me? I'm just going to stay home and lie down. And my father said, okay. And then an hour later, my father is at the celebration, and my mother walks in the door, and she says, "Well, I felt like I had to go. I just felt like I had to come here." And within 10 seconds to walking in the door, she takes a seat, and people come over to say hello, and her face falls, and she falls unconscious, and right away they called an ambulance. There was an ambulance right outside. And they rushed her to the hospital. Within 20 minutes, she was in the hospital. What would have happened had she not had this family celebration, which she had to go? She felt so strongly that she had to go to this family friend who invited her. Then she would go lie down, and then nobody would know to call an ambulance, right? And thank God she's alive till today, and may she live many more happy years. This is just one example, which is a very big example in my life that shows how God really leads your life. She thought it was her idea that she's going to the thing. She thought it was her emotion that compelled her to go. Who put that message in her heart? We all know it's too good to be true. It must have been Hashem that.
But when do you think she actually had the stroke?
Right then, when she fell.
Just then, she didn't have it. She didn't have it when she was at home.
Well, it started then, yeah,
That's what
obviously
I
it
mean.
started, right,
So if
right,
you
right,
got
right.
to help earlier, it would have been not as.
All right,
Okay.
well,
That's a story that shows you that all of your footsteps are from
Yeah.
God. I'll tell you one more story, which happened with the Rebbitzin. The Rebbitzin is the Rebbe's wife. The Rebbe, you see his picture on the wall. His wife was once getting a ride. She was going to take a walk in a park. She didn't like taking a walk in the community where everybody is. She liked to go to Long Island where nobody would see her and she would have her privacy and like royalty, take her own walk. And the chauffeur got stuck in traffic on the highway. There's a lot of traffic, so they had to take some side roads. And as they're on one of the side roads, she hears from the window of the car, she hears a woman screaming in Russian. Now she was Russian, so she heard her screaming. So she asked the chauffeur to go back and stop and go and inquire what's going on there. Why is she screaming? So he went and inquired, and apparently turned out that this woman hasn't paid her rent in a long time, and the marshal was evicting her. So they were taking out her belongings onto the street. So the Rebbitzin said, "Go ask how much does she owe." So it turns out she owed $6,700. It's in the 1970s. A lot of money, right?
Yeah.
She must have not been paying for a long time.
Like 15,000.
Yeah. So she sent back the chauffeur. She said, "Ask the marshal if he'll accept a personal check." The marshal said, "If I call the bank and verify that there's enough money in the account, they'll accept it." So she said, "Okay," and she wrote out a check on the spot for $6,700. And the marshal said, "No problem. I'm gonna get my men to move all her stuff right back in." And she told the driver, "Quickly run away before the woman realizes what happened." She didn't want anybody, giving her credit for it. Afterwards, the chauffeur asked her, "What inspired you to be so generous to a woman who you don't know, you're never going to see her again?" And she said, "When I was a little girl, I took a walk in the park with my father, who was the previous Rebbe. And he taught me a lesson. He said, look, you see the leaves that are being blown by the wind along the ground? You think the wind is carrying them? God's carrying them. Every single leaf has its own destiny, has its own destination, where it's supposed to go. And God has a whole reason why each leaf has to end up in each place. Maybe it's to provide a shade for a bug, for an insect, or maybe it's just so the person sweeping the park has a job. Whatever the purpose of that leaf is, but there's a purpose. And the same thing applies to us human beings. Wherever our feet take us has a purpose. See the screen? God establishes the steps of man. We don't travel anywhere randomly. Wherever we end up, God put us there. Just like the leaf, wherever it goes, it's God taking us. Us too, human beings. Wherever we go, it's God taking us there.
And you have to have the eyes to see it in front of you. Because I know with me, my mind's all over. I'll see if somebody is struggling to open the door and I say, oh, thank you. And I say, that's the way it should be.
That's it.
Because my eyes see it. I'm very visual, but a lot of people are not. Maybe they're too busy, maybe they don't care.
Exactly. That's the idea. The Rebbitzin concluded, she said, from when my father told me that story when I was a little kid, she said, every time I end up going somewhere, whether I was planning on going there or not, I always think God took me here. If I go somewhere where I didn't plan to go, then I say, wait, now I wasn't even planning on going here. Why did God take me here? So she said, the moment we went off the highway to take side streets, I'm thinking to myself the whole time, why are we taking the side streets? What's my purpose of being here? So when I saw that woman, I realized that's why God took me here. Of course, I have to write out the check. So wherever we go, wherever we are, any occurrence that happens to us, any experience we experience, any place, destination we end up, any encounter we have, anything a person tells us, it's all from Hashem. We're always in Hashem's hands. We have to remember these meditations. Whatever God does is for our best, and realize everything that happens to us is from God, and that will help us to live a life of less stress, less
I
worry.
like what was done by her. This was the Rebbe's wife. Now, did he find out that she did this? He was there at the time when this happened?
I don't know if you found out.
Thank you.
I wonder if
Good
you
night.
looked at the account.
Bye, Sarah.
If you looked at the bank account, and it became upset later. You know, if that was needed money that was given away, what do you think?
I have an important question, because remember, when the Bible
Yeah.
was written, most people, I assume, were Jewish. We live in a different world today. So do we, when we speak about helping someone, is it just our own, or is it anyone?
It's anyone. It's anyone. But we always help our family first.
Well, she saw this woman, and that, I mean, she heard this woman. Maybe she knew she was Jewish, you would think if she wasn't Jewish, she would have stopped and helped her. Yeah, we don't know.
That's a good question.